I'm going to cut that light behind me maybe
Okay,
a little
I'm
bit.
starting. We are live now. So, all right, as everybody starts logging in, I'm going to let everybody kind of slowly jump on here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Miranda Jones. I am the executive director here at the Galion-Crestline Chamber. Janelle retired officially from Galleon Safety Council back in, I think, August was her actual last month. So I've been taking over since. Of course, we're in the virtual world of safety council meetings. So we appreciate everybody who does log on and does watch our recordings of these. It's kind of nice to have them after the fact to go back and watch. That's just a little bit about the chamber. Um, Hopefully we'll get good news and we can go back to in-person meetings in July, or maybe we'll be virtual for a while longer. Who knows what 2021 will bring, but Stacy, I will let you go and do your updates or your announcements or anything that you have first.
Okay. Hi, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Stacy Harrington, and I am an employer services specialist with the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation. I work from home now, but I used to work from the Mansfield Service Office. So I'm coming to you live from my basement at this point. But it's good to be here. It's good to be with everybody that I used to sit and chat with during our meetings. And I hope to lay eyes on you all in person as soon as it's possible for us to all be safely together again. I wanted to just go over a couple of things really quick. Last month, I did make the announcement regarding the dividend. The last dividend credit that the governor announced is being issued right now. Some checks started going out on the 7th of December, and there's still some going out as of today. We have to do them in batches because I hope that you can all appreciate the fact that we have about 280,000 employers in the state of Ohio. So that's a lot of checks, a lot of paper checks to send out. So we do them in batches. Um, the checks, couple of things. They're 3.72 times the premium that was paid by your business in the 2019 policy year. The last dividend, the one that went out in October, was 100% of your 2019 premium. So this dividend check here in December is considered income. This is not a refund of premium. This is income. So there are tax implications for you. This is why we sent out the correspondence regarding the need for the W-9 to be uploaded to our website by your business. It is super important for you to do that as quickly as possible. And if you could include on that W-9 under line number 7, your BWC policy number, that's going to make everything real smooth. If you just upload the W-9 that you have pre-completed and it doesn't have your policy number on it, it is very likely we will reject it and ask you to do it again. So, and just to make everything easier for everybody, just make sure you include your BWC policy number. You don't need to do dashes, just the initial number, no preceding zeros. You don't need to do that. If you do, it's fine, but you don't need to. Just put your BWC policy number in line number 7 on your W-9. You can upload it online at our bwc.ohio.gov site. It's right on the homepage. Once you log in, just go back to the homepage. It's right there. Or you can, if that's not possible, if you can't do that, you do have to have a log on to get onto our website in order to do that. If you can't do that, you can mail in hard copy to our Columbus service office on 30 West Spring Street in Columbus, Ohio 43215. If you can't email the document to like me or anybody from the BWC. We're not accepting them via email because then we take on the liability of me reading your email and then entering the information. And since there are tax implications, we're not doing that. You upload your own document or you hard copy mail it in where we can scan it and nobody has to touch it. So that's the big news about that. So if you have any questions surrounding that, I do want to put like a waiver out there. The US Postal Service is overwhelmed at this point in time and moving slow. So even if we did credit your policy and kick a check on the 7th of December, it may be 2 or 3 weeks before you get that check. So I'm just putting it out there. Please don't call in and ask where your check is if you know it was cut and issued a week ago and you haven't gotten it yet. give it a good 2 to 3 weeks before you start making phone calls about the status of the check. So that will also be helpful. Quickly to go over some of the BWC classes, just to hit the highlights. I know Miranda sent out the little flyer attached, and that was very helpful. So we've got 3 virtual training classes coming up in January. The first on January the 7th is an OSHA record keeping half day class. It goes from 9:30 to 1 o'clock. On January the 20th, we have an accident analysis half-day workshop. It goes from 9:30 to 1 o'clock. And on January the 27th, there's a violence in the workplace class, and it's been from 1 to 4:30. All 3 of those classes count for BWC class credit for any of the BWC programs that you might be in. So if you have any questions about that, you can give me a call or you can email me. Or I'm going to hang around a little bit after the meeting's over. If you want to just type a question in the chat box, I'll be able to answer those for you. Thanks. It's back to you, Miranda.
All right. Thank you, Stacy. Yeah, make sure, I was talking with Stacy before, so make sure if you have not put your policy number in line 7 for that BWC thing, to make sure line 7 policy number. So Stacy, where can we find our policy number at?
Ooh, well, pretty much any correspondence we send out to you is going to have it on there. It's also on your certificate of coverage, which should be posted at your place of business. But if you have questions, if you don't know, give me a call. Let me know. I'll look it up for you.
Perfect. All right. So that leads us into our speaker for today. So I really am excited for this because I'm a runner and I end up with ugly feet. I know it has nothing to do with work related because it's my hobby, but I'm so excited to learn about this. So Lori Fannin is going to be our speaker today. So I will go ahead and let her get started if you're ready, Lori.
Yes, hello everyone. I appreciate being able to be here today. That's my second time for speaking for the Safety Council. I think the first time was back at the Palmer House, so that says a few things. I have some slides I'd like to share. Stacy, if you can talk me through that, or Miranda, I think I just hit share screen, right?
Yes.
Very good.
You just need to hit that bottom share blue button. Once it,
There we go.
There you go.
Yippee, here we go. Oh, I get to the top. Okay. I'm here to speak with you about common foot and ankle problems in the workplace. I'll try to be informative as well as brief and not gory since it's your lunch hour. I have a lot to talk about and I'll give you a brief overview and then we'll talk about some common things I see, causes, prevention, and treatments, as well as popular question and answer time. So let's get started. A little bit of anatomy. There's no test afterwards, but the foot is a marvel of orthopedics. It has 25% of the bones of the body, 28 bones in the foot and ankle, and 33 joints between all those bones, 100 muscles, tendons, ligaments, all with names and waiting to have problems in the workplace from overuse or not enough support, or on our off time, like Miranda, when we don't have enough support or we have problems with running. Especially because running is 4 times your body weight of force on the foot. We average 4,000 to 6,000 steps a day unless our Fitbit says we need to do more or want to do more, and 75,000 miles usually by age 50. So that's pretty impressive. Everybody always likes to talk about their footprint in the sand. So I found this picture, I thought it was kind of cute. The high arch foot on the top, it looks great, but it's a poor shock absorber. So it's really poor on hard surfaces like concrete, especially for the long day. That can cause an awful lot of problems. The normal rectus foot in the middle is best for the long haul, and the flat foot on the bottom, you can see it has more arch weight bearing in the sand or in the impression here. It's more porous functioning and it's more prone to march fractures. But they do say that Michael Jordan had the flattest foot ever, and look what he did. So just because you have a flat foot doesn't mean that you have to have any intervention, but or even a high arch foot. But if you have problems and are symptomatic, then you need intervention. So I'm going to go over, this is a brief overview of some of the common things I'm going to talk about that I see. Instead of talking about the crush injury or the toe motor injury or things that, you know, are kind of gory and not very common, actually, I decided to talk about some of the more common things happening to many people every day, all day long, that can certainly turn into bigger problems. I like to talk about and educate about fighting campfires as far as foot problems are concerned, rather than forest fires, because by the time you ignore things and wait long enough, they can really land you in the hospital and off work, and nobody wants that. So some of the common things that I'm going to talk about are skin issues. There's a lot of skin issues in the foot because the foot is in a 105-degree greenhouse called a shoe or a boot all day. Most people don't realize that it also pumps out about a pint of sweat a day, and that's an enormous amount if you think about it. Most of it is absorbed into a sock or shoe liner. Those should be replaced like with an odor eater like every month. Just pitch it and put a new cheap one in. You'll prevent a lot of problems that way. But also evaporation happens with some of the moisture. But the moisture combined with the heat and the constant contact in a boot, and we all have our favorite pairs of boots or shoes that we wear day in and day out, they're prone to developing fungal infections. Fungal infections are problematic because they can cause bigger problems called bacterial infections. Fungal infections break down the skin and let the bacteria that's normally present on the surface of the skin get down into the deeper layers, and then that can cause cellulitis and infections that need hospitalized or intervention, or just things that we don't want to have to take antibiotics for if we can avoid. So fungal infections are really important to prevent, to me, because they prevent the whole chain of other problems that you can have from that. Also, ingrown nails can be a problem. Sometimes they're caused by poor shoe gear. Sometimes it's genetic. Sometimes it's poor trimming. Sometimes it's just a little bit of all three. Sometimes if you ever had an injury to a nail, it might not grow back in properly, and that can be a problem. But a quick story about an ingrown nail. I had a patient I saw once before he was deployed, and he ran on his ingrown toenail for 4 months when it occurred until he could get back to see me. By that time, he had zero pain because was a Marine and ran 4 miles a day on this. He just toughed it out, and he didn't want any of the horror stories that they had told him about getting it taken care of in Colorado where he was. So he waited till he got back on leave. And by that time, I've never seen this since, the piece of nail that was ingrown actually bored its way through the end of the toe. And he had zero pain because he had severed the nerve that runs alongside of the nail margin. Very strange. But, I told him he should have gotten it taken care of out there, but, I was flattered that he wanted to wait for me to do it. Puncture wounds are something that we see also, especially with work at home people working at home now. I've seen an upload, certainly since March, of puncture wounds as far as broken glass, pieces of dog bone, actually, pieces of toys that people don't realize they're stepping on, those little plastic things that hold on a tag when you buy something at the store, a piece of clothing, those little plastic things. Pieces of dog bone, that nyla bone is really bad for the foot, and Corelle dishware can also break and turns into little circles. Puncture wounds can be bad because they go on undetected for a while and then create an abscess. And that could be a very big problem. Abscesses, certainly from blisters, rubbing on shoe gear, that can get infected afterward. Subungual hematomas, the black nail that we all see sometimes with runners as well. The end of the second toe hits the tip of the toe box if it's too short, or if your foot's moving in the shoe and causes the nail to lift up, and then it pries it loose a little bit, and a little bit of blood gets under there, and then it's going to take a year to grow out. We'll go into more of that in detail. Number 2, I put diabetics need extra protection because they certainly do. It's much better to treat a blister or a shoe fitting problem early on than wait and have an amputation, because once you have one amputation, it leads to another amputation statistically within 5 years. So if everybody did what I ask my diabetic patients to do, I guess I wouldn't be as busy, but I'd be happy because they're not having problems. You need to inspect your feet twice a day. You have 2 opportunities: when you put your socks on and when you take your socks off. Look between your toes, look on the bottom, have somebody else do it if you can. But that's very important to do because you might see something you might not be feeling. Also check the shoe and shake the shoe out, because that's another problem that I've seen where people are wearing their shoes, but they're not shaking them out. And you walk with your socks and you pick up things, you put your shoes back on, and then you step on things and it goes into the foot. I had one patient, a dear patient, he wore his diabetic shoes in the house like I asked him to, but he took his barn boots off in the garage and proceeded to walk across in front of his workbench with his bare socks. And he picked up 9 pieces of very, very fine, as thin as a piece of hair, wire from a bench grinder brush. And those were embedded in his foot. And because he put his shoes on, he thought he was fine, but he didn't realize he picked up those in his socks. So you definitely need to watch things like that. He healed up fine, but it was an ordeal. Musculoskeletal, certainly all those tendons and bones and joints can have problems. You've heard of carpal tunnel in the wrist, maybe even had it. You can get carpal tunnel of the foot called tarsal tunnel on the inside of the ankle, and I'll show that in a minute. Bursitis, you might have heard of bursitis in the shoulder or had that too. There are 3 opportunities for bursitis in the foot. A bursa is a fluid-filled sac for cushioning, and there are 3 just around the heel alone because it's that important to absorb shock, 1.5 times your body weight of force when you're walking. Heel pain, there's many types of heel pain, but I'll go into plantar fasciitis, which is a typical type of heel pain that presents a certain way. Stress fractures are different than occult fractures. Stress fractures, I like to describe them as a lifting of the banana peel away from the banana. The outer coating of the bone has nerve endings and blood vessels in it, and that can be very painful. That's what a flat foot deformity would get with a lot of extra mileage and walking or running, or certainly an unstable foot or an unstable shoe, and if your foot's moving in the shoe too much. So that can certainly cause that problem. Very painful. Doesn't show up on an x-ray for about 6 weeks until it's healed. Occult fractures is more like you break in half of a pretzel rod type of a fracture. That is more of a typical injury, like stepping off of a curb, for instance, can cause that, or in a hole, or certainly, traumatic crush injury can cause an occult fracture. Those are managed more aggressively with a surgical shoe or a cast boot. Sometimes we need to pin them, but not always. Muscle strains can certainly occur with a lot of walking as well. Neurologically, we have neuromas, which are irritations and scar tissue that's built up around the nerve, and also neuropathy. I just threw some of this in here. And this is a basic overview. There's lots of other things. These are just the highlights I picked out. Low back pain can certainly be caused by sciatica, and that can lead to problems in the foot. You might feel your big toe go numb or lightning jolts between your 3rd and 4th toes. Those are signs that the nerves are being impinged upon, just like a kink in the garden hose not letting the water go all the way through. Once you have an impingement on the L4, L5, S1, S2 discs in the vertebrae from position, posture even, or repetitive motion. Lift chairs are horrible for that sort of thing. It doesn't allow the signal to go all the way to the tip of the big toe where that sciatic nerve ends in the big toe. So you get tingling, burning, that sort of thing, or stabbing pain. Sometimes when you sleep at night, that can cause that, and that's a sign your mattress needs replaced, or a bolster, extra bed pillow, or something to hold your torso where most of your weight is. Diabetic paresthesias as well. That's usually more numbness at the end of the day, the higher sugar is, that sort of thing. I could talk about that for an hour. Vascular wise, we can see cellulitis, which is inflammation of the veins in the legs that can put you in the hospital. Usually it starts from a fungal infection on the skin, breaking down the skin, or between the little toes. Sometimes it's missed that's where the entry point was. And all they see is the red leg to the knee. And it all started with a little crack in the little toe from an athlete's foot fungal infection. So that's why I think that's important to treat. DVTs, or deep vein thrombosis, those are certainly possible. Certainly sitting at home. If you're sitting, I go into this later, but you need to get up and walk around the room or the house 3 to 5 minutes, an hour is what I recommend typically. Or if you don't want to wear compression hose, which squeeze the blood back to the heart, in order to prevent a DVT. There are certain issues that are more prone to DVTs, certain medications that cause more of a likelihood for those to happen, but those can be fatal. Varicose veins, nobody wants any of those, but that's a sign the valves aren't working in the vein as well, and let the blood flow back to the foot instead of just going back to the heart. It goes back to the foot, and the valves work like a saloon door. Ulcerations are where the skin is broken down to the deeper layers and at risk for infection. Venous insufficiency happens as well with long-standing times on your feet. If you're a cashier somewhere or just standing a lot and not getting to work or to move when you work, the legs just pool and your legs just feel heavy and tired, and that can cause problems as well. Moving on, blisters. I wanted to put this in here from poor fitting shoes. The shear forces of the ground are pushing up, and as the foot's moving against the ground, moving from heel to toe here, the moisture is the problem because that causes friction, and then that causes one layer of skin to go one way and your body is going the other. And where this is happening at this junction is where we tend to wear a problem, usually on a bony prominence under the big toe, where 80% of your weight spins off of, or your at heel contact. They can lead to infection, wound healing issues, especially in a diabetic or poor circulation patient. Certainly, they need cleaned with soap and water, saline or water and gauze, maybe an Bactine spray is something that I typically like. I have no connections with any companies, or iodine. I don't like ointments on the foot because, again, it's in a hot, moist environment. It's just going to make a wound wet and gooey. I like specific things on the foot that are cheap and easy to use. And, iodine is readily available. You can even get it colorless so it doesn't stain things. Prevention is powder, an antifungal powder usually, and pressure redistribution by an orthotic or motion control with a motion controlled shoe. Certainly with running, we don't want to have any blisters that cause problems back on the Achilles tendon that could, take you out of the race. Subungual hematoma or blood blister, this is commonly seen. We don't usually drain them unless they're very large and extending back into the proximal margin into the cuticle area, or depending on where the location is. But usually, unless they're very large or causing a secondary infection, or they're already opened, I don't usually intervene with that. So you don't have to heat up a needle and drill it through the nail plate unless you're having significant amounts of pain. Oops. Adventures in lecturing. I'm not going to try to fix it. Leaving that on there acts as a natural Band-Aid, and it'll take about 9 months to grow out. Usually it's deformed when the nail comes back in, though, because of the issue with damaging the root of the nail back by the cuticle. We definitely need to rule out a fracture in case there was a possibility of that. And yes, you can treat a broken toe, then stabilize it so you don't get a hammered hallux or big toe, or hammered toe if it's a lesser toe later on down the road. That'll be more of a nightmare. I put in here about the power of knee highs and short shoes for a quick story. At a little grandma, she came to my office and she said, "Dr. Lori, all my toes are black. I don't know what happened." And I said, "Did you have any injury?" And she said, "No, nothing like that." I picked up her shoe, and the first thing I noticed was the toe box for the entire toe box of both shoes was stuffed with her knee highs. She had been taking her knee highs off when she sat in her chair at night and didn't realize when she was sleepy that they were still there. And when she put her shoes on for the next day and the next day, that it filled up the entire toe box of her shoe. And just the power of the pressure of knee highs caused all of her toes to turn black underneath there. She healed fine. And the same thing happened with a patient that got too short of shoes and didn't know that that was an issue. Popped all of her nails off, actually. So get me out of here. Pardon me for a second. I think I'm on that one. There we go. So moving down to puncture wounds, we have certainly the nail through the bottom of the boot. I had a patient that went to an ER in a few counties away, actually, and was visiting his daughter and said to come and see me. They couldn't figure out why he had this rash on the bottom of the sole of his foot. And I took a look at his boot, and there was a big nail sticking up about a half an inch through the inside of his boot. So that was pretty traumatic. He healed up just fine, but you definitely want to inspect the inside of boots because people don't always realize that their sole of their boot is thick and they can't, that it could be absorbing things that could potentially come inside. Certainly you want your tetanus booster every 10 years, antibiotics to prevent any infection, iodine soaks, clean dry wound, dry dressing, close observation, and again, look at the inside of the boot. Plantar warts are something that I see typically because of all the moisture. Again, a hot, moist environment causes lots of things to grow. Again, moisture is a pint of sweat a day. We want to use your boots, if you want to wear the same boot, to dry them out as much as you can, put them over the register or use an antifungal powder, again, to prevent different problems. We have a fumigation spray that you use every 3 days. It's nanoparticle silver and it's heat activated. So every time you put your boots on, it won't, it'll start working again, guaranteed by the company, works great, takes away odor, and it's very reasonable. Treatment varies by location. These are solitary warts. They usually aren't a fast spreading type of virus, but they do cause problems. One girl had 26 on the bottom of her foot by the time she got here to my office. So that was a problem. I like a chemical type of treatment to remove these. It's cheap and it's easy and it's the least painful and it's the most effective, and it doesn't take you out of work. So there are quicker methods like a laser, for instance, but those are painful. And in my residency in Philadelphia, I had them come back the most. And so I didn't see the value in that unless it's for the hands. There are certain applications that would be good, in my opinion. But sometimes because it's, big and fancy doesn't mean it's better. I usually make different choices based on the type of wart that the patient has and combine 2 or 3 treatments and things that you can do at home to make them go away the fastest and least painful. Usually the first visit, we take off the hard skin and apply the medicine. You keep it dry for a day and then put some things on at night, a couple treatments, usually depending on how large it is, and then they'll be gone. But the big thing is that you need to prevent them from coming back by treating your boot. Again, fumigating what's growing in there and powder to make a swamp into a desert, basically. I did it again. Acute tinnitus or athlete's foot fungus. You don't obviously need to be an athlete, but that certainly means, again, that you have more moisture and more friction and problem of the skin rubbing together and allowing things to get in there to cause a bacterial infection. Usually starts as little red bumps. Sometimes they itch, sometimes they don't. There are many different types. It can also spread to the toenails, which can cause a serious problem for a diabetic patient or one with poor circulation, as that thick nail just gets thicker and thicker, can pop loose, can be torn off with putting socks on, can cause ulcers or infections underneath there. So we want to get rid of that. And it can also break down the skin to give them cellulitis again. If the blisters keep opening, you can get cracks around the heel that look dry or scaly, and then you put Cornhuskers lotion on them and then you seal in that moisture and it just keeps getting worse. So when you start seeing dry scales or little red bumps, either one, those are signs that you have different stages of fungus growing on the skin and that needs addressed. I have a soap that is very easy to use in the office that you wash your feet with, or you soak your feet with and you'll sleep like a baby, or you put a cream on for 6 weeks and powder for 6 weeks, clean socks that wick. Socks are very technical. You can find a lot that are very stylish, but they aren't very effective. You want to make sure that you use poly blend socks, not just straight up cotton. Cotton's a great absorber, but it traps like a wet blanket right against the skin. So you want polypropylene, bamboo, wool, nylon, something like that blended with the socks. You can get copper, you can get silver in there. All those things are naturally antifungal and naturally antimicrobial and very good for prevention. And they make for a comfortable sock. Thorlo, I think you can go to their website, and Thorlo, Thorlo, and they used to give you a free pair, but they're very, very nice socks, very specific, down to these are for the Postal Service. So, I mean, you might be able to find some for your job title even, but they're very nice socks. COVID toes, I put this in because it's timely, sadly. I haven't seen COVID toes in my office, but I've seen this problem caused by other things several times. It's a vasculitis of the small vessels down in the toes. The blood clots that are thrown get stuck down in the tiniest capillaries where they turn from artery and then they turn into a vein and then they start heading back north. When you get a clot down here in the small areas of the foot, they cause the purple hue that COVID toes have. They're microclots in the capillaries. They can lead to gangrene and amputation, and that's certainly not good. Basic anatomy of the ankle, since we covered the foot pretty well there. This is a 3rd degree ankle sprain. You don't want that. That's sometimes, usually when you have black and blue, it means something's broken or something's really torn. The ankle ligaments, we have under the true ankle, which is actually formed by the long bones in the leg, on the inside, the tibia, on the outside, the fibula. This bump that we call the ankle is really the end of the long bone in the leg. All the ligaments that attach here, we have 3 different groups. So those are like sewn into the bone. So if you step in a hole and twist your foot, these ligaments actually can tear out of the bone, and that can actually cause, if you tear enough of them, can cause this much of damage to the soft tissue. You don't have to have a fracture, but usually when it's extending up the leg, there's a fracture here, and usually it's the fibula right here. It's not such a big deal. For the broken bone part, I had it myself. Because only 10% of the weight is borne on that bone. Most of the weight is borne on the inside of the ankle, the tibia. So that is where most of the weight is and most of the support is. So if you do break the fibula, it's not as much of a problem. The ligaments need supported after the strain or tear to prevent the next one. That's the most important part of an ankle treatment. Sometimes we use a fiberglass cast. Sometimes we use a cast walker. It depends on compliance and on what the patient's work status is, and if they're able to, handle a fiberglass cast. But we need to immobilize that, usually 3 weeks for tendons, 6 weeks for bone breakage. After a cast, we usually put an air cast on or a splint like this. It can be used for sprains or strains, sometimes just weak ankles that people have because of muscle imbalance or because of fracture. After the fracture or the ankle sprain, we definitely need to do therapeutic exercises. Typically, I like to do heel drops. Everybody worries about calf raises. Go the other way and drop your heels. It'll stretch your heel cord, and that's way more important in my opinion. This is for a hamstring stretch. I have people use like a beach towel and pull their nose toward the toes 50 times each leg in the morning is really great for your hamstrings. If you can't bend from the waist and touch your toes, you need to. This is called a BAPS board. It's like the planet Saturn. You're standing on the rings. It's a wobble board to strengthen and test the ligaments and retrain them to be shock absorbers and hold the ankle tight again. Because again, preventing the next injury is the best part of a treatment and the most necessary. This is actually looks weird, but it's for teaching someone to use train the intrinsic muscles of the ankle and the foot by writing the alphabet with their toes. If you're working from home, it's definitely a good idea to do these stretches as well as walk around 3 to 5 minutes an hour, because I know come April when people are mowing lawn in their worst worn out tennis shoes, there's going to be an awful lot of heel pain and Achilles tendonitis and hamstring problems and low back pain because everybody's so tight. We haven't been walking and going anywhere for fun or for work and walking around the company or to the water cooler or to the next office. And so we're all getting very tight. And so that tightness is going to cause some of these injuries that I'm talking about. So if we can do these stretches now, that would really, really be good and save you a lot of headache and visits and things later. Arizona braces, these are if you have a really bad sprain, I just got to leave that alone. And it doesn't heal or it wasn't treated early enough, you can be stuck with wearing one of these to be able to ambulate and walk in your boot at work or in a tennis shoe. This is not something that you want to wear. You don't want to do this, but I would do this before I would recommend an ankle surgery or reconstruction, because that sometimes can just snowball into more interventions that are needed down the road to lessen someone's pain. But these are certainly an option to give the stability that someone needs if they had a problem. Anatomy of a work boot. We have, I'll go over quickly because I'm probably going over my time like I usually tend to do. Leather is the most important thing. a straight last along the back, and a straight shank across the bottom. The foot should match the shape of the shoe. So if you turn it over, it should look like the shape of your foot. If you have a foot that's shaped like a jelly bean, then your shoe should be shaped like a jelly bean. If you have a foot that's shaped like a pretzel rod, then the shoe should match that and be shaped like a pretzel rod. Why? For the foot functioning to happen at the best position possible. The metatarsals need to lock in the midfoot when your foot hits the ground at your heel. It needs to land and roll your foot off of your toes, not work like it's going around the barn and wearing on the outside of the shoes. Can certainly tell me that there's a limb length problem or hip rotation or hamstring tightness. And sometimes they need an orthotic inside, which is a support to hold the foot properly so that it can function as well. The shoe should be similar to a tennis shoe. It should be similar to a work boot. Plantar fasciitis is one of the types of heel pain that I see commonly. It's actually an inflammation of the tendon that would go along. This is X-ray looking at the side of a foot. The little spur that's formed here is where the tendon hooks into the bone. The spur isn't the problem for this situation. People think that the spur is necessary to find on an X-ray. Only 80% or only 20% of heel pain cases are treated surgically, where the spur has to be filed down or something. 80% are problems with this tendon. The plantar fascia tendon on the bottom of the foot hooks in here, and without enough support, it lets the foot flatten, and then it stretches and pulls out of the heel bone, and little tiny pieces pull out of the bone, and then the bone repairs. Similar to how a pothole is made. If you're sitting at 309 and 19 or something, there's potholes that happen in the road after certain amounts of pressure, and the surface underneath caves away. Then the pothole crew comes and repairs that, and it makes like a bump sometimes. That's how the spur is formed as well. Constant injury and repair in the same area creates the spur that's formed. So that's a sign of how weak or how strong the tendon is, or the pull is, and how weak or strong the bone is. But it's an injury repair cycle. It's usually treated with support, rest, ice, and intervention. You can also get heel pain back here. Pardon me. On the Achilles, Achilles tendon as well. This is the, pardon me, this is the tendon on the bottom of the foot. And it's usually pain in the morning when you first get out of bed, and then it gets worse after you sit down and go to get back up again. It gets better with walking as this tendon stretches out. It's an overuse injury and lack of support. Treatments usually non-steroidals like Advil or Aleve. Therapeutic exercises, I use a cortisone patch instead of a needle to deliver the medicine that we need sometimes. Contrast or hot and cold application brings more blood flow. Orthotics or support, rice, everybody knows what that is, rice, rest, ice compression and elevation. Evaluate the limb length and evaluate the shoe gear as necessary for at work, after work, and inside the home as well. Wear a slipper inside of the house or something, because that's very necessary for support. Again, the spur is an insignificant finding. Limb length issues can cause low back pain. I don't know if you can see this easily, but this limb is a lot shorter than this limb by looking at various features in the front of the foot. You can have knee pain caused by that, but the back pain is caused by the hip dropping and the other one turning, the long legs giving extra, and so it rolls away. Sometimes you can have plantar fasciitis and heel pain on that side because the foot turns in. Sometimes you can have hip pain on the short side as it's dropping and causing problems up in the hip socket. Treated with a felt lift or more of a durable one later, and a possible orthotic as well. If you're working from home, this is a good exercise to do, or yoga. Certainly, it's all about stretching. Walk around the house 3 to 5 minutes, shoulder and neck stretches, moist heat massage. Ergonomics, again, try to sit up and maintain your posture as much as you can. And heel cord stretches, again, off the stair step or against the counter are another good thing. These are just various miscellaneous conditions that I threw in here that I also treat that could be going on inside of the foot or on the foot inside of the boot or shoe with someone at work, or cause them to be out of work for periods of time. Bunion deformities should be treated conservatively first. Tailor's bunions on the opposite side of the foot by the little toe, certainly as well. Hammer toes sometimes can rub the top of a shoe. We can stretch shoes for that. Tarsal tunnel, that's on the inside of the ankle. Those ligaments that are stretched out. Shin splints, again, from running, from overuse. That means the foot's usually not stable enough and is either being overutilized, and anterior tibial muscles or pieces are stripping off of the front of the tibia or the shin bone. The flexible shoes that are out there, the mesh shoes, there's only a very few that I think are worthwhile. It's not a brand thing. It needs to match the style of your foot and how your foot is functioning. I could talk about that for an hour. Ganglionic cysts are certainly something that can cause a problem and need drained. Corns, calluses, heel fissures, dermatitis, gout, rheumatoid arthritis in writers, and osteoarthritis are some of the 50 types of arthritis that happen in the body. Skin cancers, melanomas. I've caught 5 skin cancers since I've been here 30 years. HIV, lupus, again, COVID toes, vascular ulcers, diabetic ulcers. Those are definitely need treated. Leg ulcers where they start as little blisters, usually from not enough venous return back to the heart. And so you either need compression hose. Again, that's what happens when you sit too long and the blood pools and the fluid makes the little blisters that can cause leg infections. Venous insufficiency, psoriasis, and the autoimmune disorders, foreign bodies, puncture wounds, spider bites, all sorts of fun things like that. And wrapping it all up, I hope I haven't bored you, and hopefully somebody has some questions.
Yeah, if anybody has questions right now, there's the Q&A at the bottom, or there's also the chat. In the chat, I think I'm going to paste Stacy's information for you guys. I usually do that early, but I forgot, it was waiting to be sent. So in the chat is Stacy's information if you have any questions about her updates. And we'll have some information for Lori that I'll send with the recap with the video of everything. I have a couple questions for you because, well, I always have questions when it comes to my feet. So if I wanted to, like, if I'm having a problem with my foot and I want to come and see you, do I have to call my primary care provider, or can I just come in? Like, do I need a referral?
Referrals are only needed if you have an HMO. There are a few HMOs in the area that are popping up again. There used to be Health First out of Marion once upon a time, but for those types of plans, for your insurance to cover, you do need a referral. But for most people, most PPO plans don't need a referral. Certainly for Medicare, I don't, unless it's a Medicare managed care plan or any of the managed care plans they might need. Usually it says on the card the name of a primary care provider if they need a referral, because that's the doctor that needs to give the referral. So usually that would say, but my staff could certainly answer any questions like that on an individual basis if there are any.
And then we have the what is that? The card. Like, is it an HSA card or an FSA? Do you guys take those?
Oh, HSA card, yes.
Yes.
Health savings account cards, yes, those can be utilized since I'm a medical office. They can be utilized for your pre-tax dollar benefit for either products in the office that I have, cast walkers if they're not covered by your insurance, or shoes or splints or something, any of our line of Brooks shoes that we carry, or other types of diabetic shoes, or things like that, off the shelf types of wound care products, those types of things. And certainly you can use it for your office visit as well.
Okay. We did have a question come in, and it is, do heel spurs typically occur in one heel, or can they happen in both?
Oh, good question. Actually, this goes right back to my limb length discussion. They can happen in both, but usually there's one foot that's screaming louder, and that's the one that started it all. Sometimes there might have been a low back issue and low back tightness that caused your tightness on that whole side from your hip to your heel, and that caused your gait to alter, and so that might have precipitated the heel pain. Or we all have like one hand dominant, we also have one foot that's dominant, so it could have been something like that. We certainly stand certain ways, and that could have overused one more than the other. But usually if it's two, there's typically one that's more than the other. The first thing I look at is a limb length difference, or if there was any injury that caused the other one to be sympathetic. Sometimes that happens as well. So it's a lot of question and answering and sleuthing, actually. Good
Okay.
question.
The next thing I have is, let's say that you are working at a factory. The pads, like if it's a concrete floor and they're standing in one place, do the pads, are they required to have those? Do those help really? Or is it just kind of an extra thing that some employers do? Do you
Well,
know what I'm talking about?
yes, I do. I couldn't speak to whether they're required or not. That might be a workman's comp question, actually, but I could certainly say that if you can get anything to stand on, if you have to stand in one place, wherever you are at one specific station, even if it's your kitchen sink, you want something that's absorbing the shock, because standing in one place is actually the worst possible thing, because your muscles get tight. They don't have a chance to be utilized, blood pools, and certainly the pressure just standing at 1.5 times your body weight to force walking, just standing it just compounds, and you can really put a lot of pressure on the balls of your feet. If anyone ever went from a sedentary job to back on their feet again, they can certainly attest to, wow, my feet just took a while to get used to that sort of thing. So if you can get a mat, that would really be great. There's all different types of gel insoles, and sometimes you need professional strength ones of those that are available. Sometimes it's just the heel that needs more shock. And I think I had a picture, I might not have been able to load it, of a heel cup that you can get. It's a gel heel cup that just absorbs the shock at heel contact to take the pressure away from the bursitis. But usually if you can get a mat, it's a very good idea to do that.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns? Stacy, do you have anything?
Well, I'm happy to address the requirement part of the mat question. The answer is no. But as with anything safety related or injury prevention related, we highly encourage it, because obviously, if you can stop it from happening initially, that's the best possible case scenario. So if you can, we would put that in the same category as any kind of common PPE, that you would provide for your employee. If you've got people standing on concrete all day long, it makes sense to give them a mat.
Stacy, do you know how many BWC claims there are every year in relation to the feet?
I really don't, but I can tell you that, any time, and it's exactly what Dr. Fannin has pointed out, that anytime you've got one thing that could be small and prevented, when it's your feet, it increases, it goes throughout your body. You've got all kinds of multiple issues. And if you're, favoring a foot, or your gait is off, I mean, are you going to be able to physically perform your job tasks as normal? And would that put you at risk for some other type of injury? Yes, it would. So, as far as how many are because of this sort of thing, I mean, it's a good question, but I would suspect a lot of it. I mean, as she pointed out, folks with multiple issues going on, especially the tough guy employees, wearing the big boots, and they're not paying attention to their feet. They're not looking at all those things. But, one thing leads to another. And then one day something terrible happens. So, I would say anytime an employer can do something to prevent things from the outset, common sense things like this, where, if you've got a bunch of people standing on concrete all day long for year after year, there's going to be issues.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else have anything? If not, I think we're good. And I will get all of this stuff emailed out to everybody this afternoon once it loads. Here is Dr. Fannin's information. I'll leave this up for a second so you guys can write it down if you wanted it. It's really nice to have somebody close here in Galion that in Crawford County that can help out with these type of things. So, and just for my own personal, did you say you have Brooks shoes?
Yes, I do. They're one of my very favorite lines.
Those are my go-to for running. So
We get about a 30% discount from our supplier. We have a diabetic shoe program, and they also have a full line of shoes, and we get about a 30% discount off the average, and certainly the best fitting that you'll ever have, and customer service in the area. I can attest to that easily. And we have repeat customers come back for their off the shelf shoes as well. We're not a full-fledged shoe store, but what I like to do is match up the foot type and the problem that the foot is having and the patient's having with their shoes, with the right style and the right model of the shoes that are currently available. We get them hot off the press, the newest models that you won't find anywhere else. And that I like to match up what the foot needs with what the shoe can deliver. And I like to do that by evaluating the foot first. Take care of their foot problem if they came in with a rash or something. But if it leads to a shoe discussion, I certainly like to evaluate and measure and evaluate what the foot is needing and how it's functioning, whether it needs an orthotic or a stable last or a cushion ride, or what type of midfoot support it needs. Very detailed evaluation to match the shoe up with the person's needs. And my assistant is very, very adept at fitting shoes and knowing how certain styles run smaller or larger or what have you, and getting the person the best fit that they can and the best value that I think that you can find around. That's my other little business within my four walls of podiatry practice. But I certainly like the Brooks lines as far as overall value and support. And once you're a Brooks wearer, I don't think many people change from that.
Yeah, I have it. So, all right. Well, thank you. I don't have anything else today. So I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you again in January. Have a safe and happy holiday season. And
yes, Miranda, thank you. Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to thank you for allowing me to speak today. And thank you, Safety Council, for wanting me to be here. Again, I've enjoyed getting back in the saddle and lecturing again. Maybe not by Zoom. I'm much more comfortable in person if you do have that need or something. But I wanted to offer everybody a complimentary virtual health screening to you as well as your employees. It would be scheduled, a brief evaluation and suggestions given to hopefully prevent an office visit. But if one's needed, that could be established later through my office or telehealth, even in these times, or something even possibly on site. So I just wanted to extend that to you and wish you a happy and healthy holiday season. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. You guys have a great day.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.